Hi, Theater Philadelphia. We are back with another podcast episode in celebration of our seventh annual Philly Theater Week. My name is CJ Higgins. I am the Director of Programming and Operations here at Theater Philadelphia, and I use they, he pronouns. Today, we are talking with Alex Burns, Daniel Miller, and Lee Thomas Cortopassi, who are part of Quintessence Theater Group's production of Macbeth, which, first of all, are we cool to say that? Like, is anybody in a theater right now?
Nope.
Brilliant. I worked on a production of it last summer with Del Shakes, and people would be like, "Oh no, I'm not allowed to say," and I'd be like, "We are in a restaurant and we are talking about the play, so that doesn't count." Cool. So, everybody want to give our audience a quick introduction to who you are and what your role is in this production?
Sure. I'm Alex Burns. I am the producing artistic director at Quintessence Theater. I am also the director of Macbeth, and my pronouns are he, him.
I'm Daniel Miller. I play Macbeth. So had to let that one go real quick. And
Yeah, for sure.
and I use he, him pronouns.
And my name is Lee Cortopazzi. I play Macduff and one of the witches. And I also use he, him pronouns.
Great. All right. So audiences are surely at this point familiar with the story of Macbeth, the renowned soldier turned king by way of his wife's ambitious persuasion. From what I've heard around the neighborhood, Quintessence has elected to present this story with an all-male cast and even bloodier than one might expect, which is saying something for Macbeth. Anybody want to tell us more about these choices for this play?
Yeah, so I have spent probably the majority of my career directing Shakespeare's works and traveling all over the country to do so. And we built or founded Quintessence to become a new home for Shakespeare in Philadelphia and the classics, and really looking at the classics as a way to kind of investigate themes or ideas or issues of the day without actually rewriting or adapting the plays. And single gender or all male Shakespeare has been something that we've done a number of times. This is our sixth production at Quintessence, and I've just found in my own journey as a Shakespeare director and producer that there's something really kind of thrilling about looking at the practice of single gender Shakespeare by making gender something that is created both by Shakespeare's incredible poetry, where he focuses on gender. He uses the word man or male 62 times in the play Macbeth. And the idea of gender and its sort of diaspora is something that he colors very frequently through his poetry, is something that I find really exciting. I think I also really think or feel this kind of a difference in just how an ensemble works together when you're working on a single gender production. It really means that every body that walks into the room is a kind of blank slate that you get to use the aesthetics of performance or design or language or event to establish everything from gender to age to class to status. So the theater becomes one of expression as opposed to necessarily one of reality or sort of an authentic reality. It's one of artifice. And to me, that's where the heightened language of Shakespeare's works becomes really exciting. So that was the answer to part one. Part two for me, this is one of Shakespeare's later plays. He wrote it during the Jacobean age. England was in utter flux and sort of chaos as it transitioned from Queen Elizabeth to King James. And all of the theater that was happening at the time was full of blood. It was a theater of blood. There's many ways you can parse why that was the case. And Shakespeare's Macbeth is one of his bloodiest plays, but I really wanted to take the events of the play that you don't often get to see or just hear related through poetry and make them present on stage. So in our production, a lot of the offstage murders are happening on stage. And we had an incredible team of Sean Bradley, our fight director, as well as Gianna Zulli and Jade, who were two special effects experts that made sure that we could actually have a full bloodletting on stage. And I find that aspect of theater, I mean, it used to be an entire genre, the theater of blood. And I'm sad that theater doesn't do more of that, because I think seeing, blood on stage is cathartic and spiritual and ritualistic in a really exciting way. And I love that we're bringing that back, or really exploring that with this production.
So what interests me about what you said in regards to the all having casting everybody like a all one gender production, in like talking to you now and from what I've read from like various statements and things from this production, is a lot of talk about theater as an allowed space for a person to embody different genders. I personally know that myself as a transgender person and a lot of transgender actors have felt that the stage was one of the first spaces that they were able to safely explore their gender. And this very well could unfortunately be a reason why that practice is seeing bans in the past few years, particularly among queer performers. Um, Daniel or Lee, could either of you talk about what it has meant for you to explore gender on this stage, whether by doing it yourself or by sharing that space with your fellow actors?
I'll jump in since I play I get to I get to play a witch and Macduff, which is really thrilling to get to do both. And to kind of piggyback off of what Alex said, I feel like especially with Shakespeare and with a lot of grand classic stories that were written hundreds of years ago, that are quote unquote classic for a reason, because they continually resonate with audiences throughout the years, because the story is timeless and the themes of the story are timeless. And I think specifically in those stories, um, characters are archetypes that represent the archetypes of humanity, so that when somebody walks on stage, you recognize this is this archetype, this is that archetype. And within those archetypes, of course, there's the nuances of who the actual character is, which will make a much more visceral and interesting performance. But right off the bat, you need to recognize who this person is that's walking on stage. So as a cisgendered male stepping into a role like the witch, that is how I thought of it, is what is the archetype of this witch for me, in tandem with the other two witches, because we are a unit that work together. And so, when I put the dress on for the witch, or the robe, I mean, I don't know what you would necessarily call what we're wearing as witches, but I'm not thinking, how do I become feminine, or how do I act like a cisgendered woman? Those aren't things that I'm thinking. I'm thinking, who is this character, and what energy does do they bring on the page? And then I take that energy that I feel from the page, and what I'm given by my director, and what my fellow actors are giving me when we're working together in rehearsal, and that character starts to manifest itself. And I think myself, with the other two witches, we found a vocabulary of movement together, that's different than how I move in space in reality. But I would do that for any character. And Macduff also does not move the way that I move. And so I think that plays like these, that are so visceral in their poetry, where there isn't very much subtext, it's all in the text, really allow you to create a character physically, and thinking about that physical body is really, really exciting to me.
Yeah, and I get the fortunate and unfortunate role of getting to play the titular character and playing gender that is one of my own, but also as a gay man playing this very heteronormative character who exudes masculine energy and pushes it to the forefront and continues to go beyond. And that performance of that gender to the nth degree for me has been quite interesting, especially, and I would be remiss to not mention my serious counterpart in the show, Scott Parkinson, who uses they, he pronouns and is playing Lady Macbeth. And our energies on stage and our relation to each other and what that does to an audience is kind of electrifying and so fun. I mean, like, Scott is just incredible, and it is so wonderful to work with him. And but that performance for both of us, pushing ourselves into this performance and what that does and what that gives each other, is just really exciting to explore on stage.
Awesome. The Lee's mention regarding like the archetypes of gender and balancing how you portray those or choose not to portray those on stage. It definitely recalled for me, obviously the fact that gender performance is seeing a lot of pushback from like our governments and from different communities for, indoctrinating the children or whatever. And trying to erase queer people is what it is. And I recall the director's note that was released alongside the cast announcement cited the fact that transgender individuals are experiencing violence and discrimination, such as these bans, as a reason that this production is important to stage at this time. So anyone, how do you feel that this production, including the actors who were selected to tell this story in this way, addresses or combats that discrimination, specifically the laws being passed against transgender performers, which the note cited as an example?
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate in that we receive funding from the National Endowment for the Arts through Arts Midwest for our Shakespeare outreach. So we're going to have over 2,000 students from the Delaware Valley area coming to see this production. And what's been really amazing is in the post-show conversations, all but one of them, we've had seven of those performances so far, a conversation about gender and specifically the choice to cast an all-male identifying cast in this production was made. And what's been really thrilling to me about it specifically are the number of questions that have said, do you feel like you are taking risks or in danger because of the fact that you're doing something that is considered illegal in many parts of this country by having men performing as women on stage? And the fascinating thing to me is for specifically teenagers, high school age students, to be kind of asking those questions as they're also meeting Shakespeare and meeting these larger issues of power and ambition and international conflict and warfare, while thinking about gender, I think is on that level is really, really, I think, profound and exciting. I also think that, for me personally, the act of gender performance, whether you're considering it to be drag or you're considering it just the presentation of gender in modern life, I think we're in such an exciting moment where hopefully we can all continue to break down these kind of archetypes and barriers and really ask ourselves, why do we hold certain truths to be self-evident about gender when they really are vestiges of practices that have been existing for thousands of years, sometimes harmful to the individual at the center of the practice. And I think when you really make gender something that is, as Daniel was saying earlier, hyper masculine, hyper feminine, the performance of femininity, the performance of masculinity, I think you have space in which to reflect upon the reality of it in an artificial construct that allows your brain to kind of really potentially ask some more complicated and difficult questions about your own identity and your own practice. So I'm hoping that that is really where there is a profound impact, so that, when people are thinking about when they want to be powerful, what do they need to present? Do they need to, put on the armor of a suit? What is that suit? Do they need to put on a full face of makeup? What is that makeup? And how that relationship is going to move forward in the future. So to me, that is where we're kind of asking and answering that question. I think specifically in regards to the trans identity and this idea that the gender construct is something that is individual to each person, and that it is a kind of journey or realization that needs to be found over time and over one's own life. I think this play and this production specifically really celebrates the idea of the transformation in trans and the ability of one body to represent or hold the divine feminine or the divine masculine simultaneously or different times in different ways. And so in a more abstract, spiritual way, I hope that it's seen truly as a celebration of the full complexity of gender, and not by specifically using this avenue into the art through single gender Shakespeare, limiting that perspective.
Daniel or Lee, any thoughts on that subject?
I think you covered it pretty well.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I brought up the director's note that was released alongside the cast announcement earlier, and I did want to circle back to that because at least from what I have seen, there has been ongoing feedback from the Philly theater community, particularly in regards to that note released alongside the cast announcement, which many felt to be exclusionary to those of us who are not cisgender men, including women and transgender individuals. I wanted to provide you all the space to share your thoughts on this feedback and to open a conversation about this production's goals with our audience and with me, a transgender, specifically non-binary transmasculine person. Do any of you have any thoughts regarding the feedback that this production has received? Has it influenced the approach or process in this production?
Well, I feel like it would be for me to speak to, because I was the one that wrote the statement. And Lee and Daniel are just actors in the production. Yeah, no, it's been a fascinating journey with all of it. The rationale or the hope of writing a statement was just to create a context in which the decision or the artistic vision could be expressed preemptively, and create a space for a conversation. I think the intent obviously was not to harm or upset anybody. It was really just to specify or be clear about the journey we were going on, Quintessence, or beginning to go on. And what's been interesting is a number of conversations have happened, both private and some a little more public, about this idea of doing single sex or single gender Shakespeare. And even the question of whether Shakespeare is still relevant or worthy of being staged today. And I think those conversations will continue. And I'm really excited to bring my perspective on it, which I think is quite specific to the work, to that conversation with the Philadelphia theater community. I think the things that really surprised me was in making the statement, I know that I used the word testosterone, which was perceived by many as being this kind of monolithic statement about masculinity or male energy, which was certainly not, and while I see how it could be interpreted that way, it was certainly not the intent, as much as to express just the non-gendered, visceral reality of violence, or the thrill or excitement of athletic violence or intensity. And so that was clearly a misstep on my part in not considering the full weight of that word in this moment, specifically within the trans community. And then similarly, just the whole concept of all male, when male is a word that is being deconstructed right now, was also challenging for a number of people. So we did think about, or we did do many other drafts to revise the statement, acknowledging some of the feedback, but it seemed like at the heart of it, the fundamental issue that most people had between either looking at all maleness or looking at maleness without a female component or women being involved in the artistic, as in the acting ensemble, was something that we were not going to derivate from within this particular creative process. So it was hard to ultimately change the statement too much. And we ultimately decided the best course of action was just to take it down and to continue as many of the conversations as we could. So I think this Sunday, we're having a post-show conversation in which I'll be addressing a number of these issues for audience members and members of the Quintessence community that are interested in. I know there's conversations about future forums to be had for the theater community to discuss specifically Shakespeare and gender in Shakespeare. Yeah, I think what I brought into the process after I read a lot of or all the notes that were submitted to us was really thinking even more intently on just the function of gender and performance. And what was fascinating was, while there was this sort of storm happening within the community in the rehearsal room, I felt like a lot of the concerns and the realities of the care which we needed to take over gender was manifesting itself in the creative process. And I was really trusting in the fact that my instincts and my experience and the people that I had with me in the space, both actors and the creative team, were excellent enough and aware enough that collectively we could make sure we created something that was not only not offensive or harmful, but also transformational and inspiring and elevated in regards to the performance of gender. And I think we have created something quite extraordinary. I think it's by far my favorite, one of my favorite top two Shakespeares we've ever done at Quintessence. And I think I'm glad that we have risked this enterprise at this time, and now we're just trying to figure out how to better facilitate dialogue, or when we move forward in other similar explorations, because I hope there will be future ones, how to engage the community better preemptively so it doesn't seem like a didactic statement or a call to arms that is creating harm or alienating anybody within the community.
Yeah, I know I'm at least from my perspective, honestly speaking, I found some like stumbling points in regards to like the communication from Quintessence about this production. You mentioned the testosterone subject, and like we all know that everybody has testosterone in it to some level or another. There is not a body wandering this earth that the level is zero. And there is a idea of people who have more testosterone in their body being more violent or aggressive, which has been used against transgender women specifically. And I think just generally speaking, there is a certain level of caution and consideration that like cisgender artists need to take in regards to making a statement about gender in a world where what gender looks like, what masculinity looks like, what it means to have an all-male production is different than it was in the past. As in the past, an all-male production would mean everybody on this stage was assigned male at birth and still identifies with masculinity now. Where one would hope that in a production where gender is being explored so heavily that to have one single gender as a feature of it, there is more encapsulation of what masculinity means. I mean, I know myself and a lot of other trans masculine artists have a lot to say when it comes to trying to embrace our masculinity in a world that is actively attempting to erase it through violence. And that is a perspective that I think is necessary in these conversations about what masculinity means. So noting that I am obviously not asking for individuals to be outed by name, unless they've given explicit permission for that to be the case. Has the production specifically consulted with any transgender individuals in or out of the room in regards to how the subjects of gender, specifically masculinity, are approached in this production? Like, I know you said you were having some conversations. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, no, there's been many conversations. I am very close to a number of trans people. I mean, um, I ran the statement by two of my dearest trans friends, and they both did not take objection to the statement before it was published, and were both surprised by the response to it, but understood where it was coming from. I think there is a lot of um, different perspectives on where the forefront of gender exploration is right now, especially on stage, especially for work that is receiving federal funding and is trying to push questions of gender without also, you know, alienating or triggering pushback from a different side. So it isn't. I find all of that fascinating. I think we also got caught in a certain way. We didn't feel comfortable as an ensemble expressing the gender identity or the sexuality of the artists involved that, you know, were on their own gender journeys. There were a number of artists who consider themselves to be non-binary or to be on their own gender transitions who auditioned for the roles, who were offered or considered for roles, and who ultimately did not end up in the production for reasons of the realities of life and conflicts of schedules and all of those things. And if any of them had been in the project, you know, the terminology would have been different, and we were willing to do that and excited to do that. It's just where we kind of ended up, where we had that, you know, the reality of being in a room with a group of individuals who all were at the time identifying with male pronouns. So, you know, that was our space. We had a very really incredible creative team on this project. Kelly Myers was just a phenomenal partner in terms of creating design and looking at the sort of history of gender and gender performance. We also had our whole special effects team was a powerhouse consortium of very powerful women who specialized in horror and gore, and they did a phenomenal job at bringing to life all of that work. And the conversations, yeah, continue in rehearsal. We're in understudied rehearsals right now with our group, who are similarly on their own kind of gender transformations or gender explorations, and so the conversations endure.
I am happy to hear that the conversation is ongoing, and I do genuinely hope that, like, from this, like, Quintessence as a company and the artists in general have used this as a learning opportunity and a chance to, like, further these conversations about what gender means in these spaces and how it is that we present it to audiences and how we include artists of marginalized gender identities in our spaces. So all of that said, how do y'all feel that this production welcomes new audiences to the Greater Philadelphia Theater? Because that's the point of Philly Theater Week.
Yeah, I just think a lot of people think of Shakespeare as this kind of antiquated or stilted space. And I think that anyone who comes and sees this production will be overwhelmed by its intensity, its speed, the scale of it. You literally kind of put yourself in your seat and put on your belt, and we take you on a pretty extraordinary 2.5 hour roller coaster ride. Which to me, all of Shakespeare should feel like that, but sadly, it just doesn't get done that way very often anymore. And I think what's also interesting is Shakespeare is a place for language. I mean, it's a place where your ear, your mind, your soul can be reattuned to the power of the spoken word, specifically to the English language. And I feel like we're delivering that full force. Every actor on our stage is exemplary at using language to create reason, emotion, and event. So it's a real gift to get to watch this ensemble tear up this play. And what's been fascinating too is not to go back to the gender conversation, but
No, go back to it.
the number of artists who have come to me, male, female, non-binary, and said that Scott Parkinson's performance as Lady Macbeth is the greatest performance of the role they've ever seen, and creates a revelation of character is profound to me, and was part of the intention for this, one of the many, but a primary intention for this project and its approach. And I think it's really fascinating just to think about when a human being matches or comes into a character at a certain moment in their own life and kind of unlocks it in a way like this. And since theater is ephemeral, and it only happens and then it disappears after it's closed, the opportunity to see an artist like Scott with that level of excellence play a role as powerful and spectacular as Lady Macbeth is a gift to me, to Quintessence, and I think to the community. So I really hope that all of Philadelphia turns out to see truly what the power of a great performance is on stage.
Yeah, I would like to jump on that and also
Yes,
say that the responses from the audiences, be that right after the show or going into a restaurant afterwards and being all the effusive statements that anyone would make after seeing the show, is that from all ages, that they're just so enthralled at how entertaining and how fun was a word was used yesterday, that Macbeth would be, that they would not initially think that, or especially about Shakespeare, and just to say inviting these audiences to come, but again, even to our students, where we are bringing up these gendered conversations like excitingly and dangerously, but also like with enthusiasm, that on this heightened level of acknowledgement of gender, that we are presenting these to everyone in this range, and that the responses are overwhelmingly exciting.
Yeah, and I find, you're by the way, what a wonderful conversation this is. And I do think that is what is really most exciting to me, is that for better or worse, by doing this production, how we're doing it. And again, as Alex stated, I'm an actor in the production, so I'm just happy to be performing in it. But witnessing all of this happening, it's really wonderful that people care so much and we care so much. And at the end of the day, we're trying to all figure out how to move into a better, healthier, safer space for everyone, especially in the arts, because that's what we do. So I just wanted to say that, because I'm really enjoying mostly listening to this, but jumping in to speak about what we're providing to bring new audiences to Philadelphia and to get people more involved in theater. I had a friend of mine see the show on opening night who had never really seen Shakespeare before. And I've talked to some other people after performances that have never really seen Shakespeare before, and they were shocked that this is Shakespeare. I think this specific production is incredibly provocative, incredibly thrilling. There are elements of hardcore genre. I mean, psychological horror, thriller, giallo horror, and then like sweeping romance. I mean, the is there as well, and then the epicness of war, going to war and actually fighting a full battle on stage. Like at the end of the play, I feel like I'm in a very, very, very intense game of capture the flag, where I'm running on and off stage with a sword, looking for Daniel so I could fight him. And he's fighting hundreds of people, and it feels like it's really happening. And the bloodletting that happens on stage while we're speaking this poetry, while we have this incredible soundscape and lighting design, this is a very cinematic, aggressive, provocative, violent, and sexy Macbeth that I think is very of today. It does not at all feel antiquated, at least from the inside and from the experiences I've had talking to audience members throughout previews, and now that we're into the official run after some of the performances. It's very exciting to hear people shocked, surprised and elated over what they've just experienced and wanting more of it.
Awesome. All right. Anybody want to give the typical spiel of when and where folks can find this production?
Yes, so Quintessence is in residence at the historic Sedgwick Theater in Northwest Philadelphia, in the neighborhood belovedly known as Mount Airy. We are right off the Chestnut Hill East and the Chestnut Hill West train line, or the 23 bus, right from Center City. And you can get tickets at quintessencetheater.org or qtgrep.org.
Great. Thank you three so much for having this chat with me, and enjoy the rest of your day. And audiences, go see some theater this week. Go see it all the time. Go check it out. Theater's pretty cool.
So much great theater in Philly.
Yeah.
So true.
Thank you, CJ.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you.